Hey, how's it going guys? My name is Eelwood and today we've got two very special games to look at today. To celebrate a whopping 100,000 total views on the channel, I've decided to review a truly timeless classic pair that started it all, Pokemon Red and Blue. For the sake of the video, I will be reviewing them together since the only real difference between the two is a handful of specific Pokemon. So as per usual, let us answer the ultimate question, is it worth your time? So, Red and Blue are single/multiplayer pixel art fantasy adventure RPGs. Set in a fantasy version of the real-life Kanto region of Japan, you take on the role of a boy protagonist formerly known as Red, tasked with filling your portable encyclopedia with information on the region's wildlife by your local professor. You'll be exploring a surprisingly vast and diverse continent, taking on an assortment of gyms, villains, as well as a league, all while catching, training, and evolving the mysterious pocket monster creatures of this universe, otherwise known as Pokemon. So, aesthetically, as with all titles released on the original Game Boy console, the game is entirely 8-bit of course due to the very few pixels used for most of the game's assets, as well as the extremely limited colour palette in order to accommodate the very low performance power of the handheld device back in the day, which regardless still completely blew my mind as a kid anyway. Colours used are, as mentioned, extremely limited and also varied depending on the console you've used at the time. Every single asset in the entire game has been created using only 4 colours: white, light grey, dark grey and black. This means on the original Game Boy you would of course see black and white only, but on later consoles like the Game Boy Color and Advance, they used a unique masking system where the 4 colours would change into other combinations based on the sprite in question and the area you're located. For example, Lavender Town used more of a purple colour palette, whereas Saffron City has more of a yellow theme to it. And sprites are exactly the same. You could have both a purple Ekans and a yellow Pikachu on screen at the same time because the game would consider them completely different sprites, thus assigning specific colour masks to each one. Very smart. Lighting effects are obviously non-existent since we are talking about an early 90s 8-bit game, but I suppose the closest thing you're gonna get are a few battle animations from specific Pokemon attacks that involve some sort of flash effect, like Dream Eater, Blizzard or Hyper Beam. But that's about it. You don't get any kind of terrain torch-like effects either. In fact, the only terrain animation you actually get is from bodies of water and the occasional flower bobbing up and down. Talk about minimal, eh? Now, the textures and detail used, I have to say, is something I've always loved about the original Pokemon games. The fact that they've been able to create simple yet very distinct objects like buildings, devices and terrain using such a limited amount of pixels, it's amazing. Combine this with a ridiculously small 4 colours maximum for the entire game's shading. It literally blows my mind every single time I think about it. In fact, it was these very assets that inspired me to start dabbling in pixel art in the first place. Yes, I know, cute as fuck. The UI while exploring this vast continent is literally non-existent. During battles, however, it becomes a very congested arrangement of boxes and words that even manage to make contact with one another due to the sheer lack of space on screen, which is never good. This, however, is completely justified due to the incredibly small pixel limit when considering both character limits and the various important information needed on screen at all times like HP, statuses and the actual Pokemon sprites. Other screens like menus, inventory and Pokemon status screens are again definitely on the more congested side, but considering these factors still manage to get the job done no problem. Level layouts are considerably bigger than I originally expected back when I played for the first time many moons ago, especially with some of the underground caves, sea areas and the safari zone. Ground clutter is kept to an absolute minimum throughout, but not once did I find a particular area too bare or too busy. They of course have the more cozy, smaller areas as you would expect, but considering the storage size of the actual game cartridge, you've got quite a lot of ground to cover. Character and enemy designs are by far the most iconic visuals of any Pokemon game, Red and Blue being no exception. The Pokemon sprites are incredibly detailed and thanks to the anime were really brought to life back in the 90s. While the entire game is based on an 8-bit design, the actual Pokemon sprites have been created using far more pixels than the overworld visuals, leaning slightly more towards a 16-bit design due to their larger size alone. This was likely a critical decision made in order to ensure that the sprites had enough detail to be distinguishable for the original release of the anime in Japan. There are quite a few sprites with more of a questionable appearance, but fortunately with the release of Pokemon Yellow, a lot of improvements were made to give each sprite a much more relevant look to match their animated counterparts, human NPC characters included. Overall, an outstanding visual quality that, considering the hardware limitations, blew the minds of players all over the world. The OSTs in Red and Blue are without a doubt absolutely fucking brilliant. Arguably some of the greatest soundtracks in Pokemon history, even to this very day. Whether you're a lover of old school soundtracks or cannot stand the 8-bit genre, you have to admit that the sound quality is definitely there regardless and has really set the foundation for its predecessors. Each track is a pretty simple arrangement of very basic FX sounds that manage to create some of the most bold, iconic and distinct OSTs in the entire Pokemon series. You've got the uplifting town and route tracks, the ominous cave and hideout tracks, as well as the very intense battle soundtracks, all of which are incredibly catchy and will likely stick in your head for many years to come. Not to mention the countless fan and official remixes they've had over the years either, all of which pale in comparison to the raw charm and character of the originals. My mind was truly fucking blown as a kid, and even to this day I like to listen to the playlist on occasion. Cracking job, Nintendo, I must admit. Everything else sound related, like the general sound effects, Pokemon cries and the various attack sounds, are just as high quality and take the word iconic to a whole new fucking level. Take my word for it. I remember in school we would have competitions on who could guess the most Pokemon cries without looking at the screen, and trust me, I was definitely among the top 3 of my class. The attacks, I have to say, are just as memorable and have some impressively powerful sounds to go with the quite limited attack animations. Hyper Beam, funny enough, has maintained its iconic 8-bit roots throughout the entire Pokemon series to date. A very nice touch. Overall, a truly timeless sound quality that you couldn't forget even if you tried. Now for the gameplay. So firstly, Pokemon games in general don't really have any difficulty options to choose from before you play, with Red and Blue being no exception. It is what it is, whether you like it or not, just like every good game should be. The lore of the game is definitely on the simpler side when compared to later titles, but as mentioned, you take on the role of the boy protagonist Red, you get approval from your mother to leave home since it said so on TV, get stopped by Professor Oak, to which he basically says it's dangerous to go alone, take this. You're then presented with the hardest decision of your entire childhood, choosing a starter Pokemon. You also get to meet the next door neighbor's annoying kid that just so happens to be your sworn rival. You then decide to try out each other's Pokemon in your first ever Pokemon battle and hopefully wipe that pixelated smug right off his face. Professor Oak then eventually gives you a Pokédex, an automated portable encyclopedia device to aid you in fulfilling his ultimate dream, catching and documenting every single Pokemon in the entire region. When you first start the game, you're given a short yet quite informative introduction to the world of Pokemon by Professor Oak. You're then able to select your character's name from either a few preset options, or better yet, make your own. And the best part, you can do this for your rival too. And fair play, when I was in school we had some really fucking funny rival names, let me tell you. So once you've chosen the character's names for your playthrough, you spawn in front of your SNES, take control of your character and play. The controls of Pokemon are probably some of the easiest controls you will ever experience in gaming. You have your standard up, down, left, right movement controls as you'd expect, an interact button, and that's pretty much it. Since the hard work of battling is done purely by your trusted Pokemon, all you'll be doing as a trainer is barking orders and selecting commands, which is pretty much all you will ever need anyway. Throughout the early game, you'll start to encounter wild Pokemon in areas like grass and caves, catching said Pokemon by throwing Pokeballs. Your progression mainly comes from exploring a certain area until you reach a town, explore areas beyond that town until you reach another one, rinse and repeat until you've explored the entire continent. As you take your baby steps fulfilling Professor Oak's dream, the game will slowly gravitate your main goal towards winning the Pokemon League rather than catching all Pokemon. This is because in order to progress past each town, you're pretty much forced to beat that town's local gym before you're allowed to actually continue. Each gym will grant you 1 gym badge. 8 gym badges are required to enter the Pokemon League. You get the idea. In your travels, you'll also come across Pokemon centers for healing your team, marts for buying in and out of combat items like Pokeballs or escape ropes, finding lootable items lying all over the place, interactable objects that require a specific ability to be used by your Pokemon to get past, a handful of not too complicated mazes and puzzles to complete certain areas, plenty of NPCs for both dialogue and progression purposes, hostile NPCs that want to battle your Pokemon on site, and the town's local gyms for a much tougher challenge. The combat aspect of Pokemon has always been an impressive blend of complexity and simplicity, even for these older titles. Pretty much every turn-based battle system out there, even today, has the same objective no matter what the game: kill the opponent. However, with Pokemon, you get an attack accuracy system, a critical strike system, there's burns, poisons, confusions, stat reductions, switch outs, super effectives, immunities, and that's just to name a few. I'm not even gonna try to explain the ins and outs of the entire Pokemon combat system because we'd be here all day. But just a few things to keep in mind: you can carry a maximum of 6 Pokemon with you at a given time. Every Pokemon has a set type such as fire, water, or grass, with a total of 15 possible typings. If you were to use a water attack on a fire Pokemon, it would result in a double damage super effective hit. Each Pokemon has a maximum of 4 possible attacks that are not restricted to that Pokemon's type and can vary completely. These attacks can be overwritten with stronger or more useful moves which are unlocked through leveling up or the use of items called TMs. You can also get most Pokemon to evolve when enough levels are gained, which will often produce a bigger, stronger version of the previous, which can sometimes affect its typing. You can use items while in combat like potions, status heals, or revives. It pays to know the type of your opponent's Pokemon so you can switch in a Pokemon best used to counter it. The Pokemon with the highest speed stat generally goes first. Weakening wild Pokemon first before you try to catch them increases your capture chance, and you're obviously not allowed to throw Pokeballs at owned Pokemon. I've obviously missed out a lot of information there, but if for whatever crazy reason you don't know what Pokemon is and have never played a Pokemon game, that should be enough information to get you started. And don't worry if it seems complicated based on its pretty deep combat mechanics. Keep in mind that pretty much every kid in my school between the ages of 6 and 10 managed to complete it eventually, so I'm sure you won't have any trouble. Overall, an incredibly simple yet substantial gaming experience that has managed to truly stand the test of time. So for the ultimate question, is it worth your time? It's a timeless must-play that can be enjoyed by gamers of all ages. It still stands today as one of the greatest titles of the entire series and was without a doubt a 90s international phenomenon that took the world by absolute storm. I'm going to give this game a 5-star or 94 out of 100. I remember the very first day I got Pokemon Blue and the original black and white Game Boy like it was yesterday. It must have been my 6th or 7th birthday party. I was sitting in the back garden, I unwrapped the box, saw the game case, and oh my fucking god, I could not believe my eyes. Someone had batteries for the Game Boy at the ready. This must have been about midday time. Next thing I know, it's almost night time, everyone went home and I didn't even notice. When people were trying to get my attention, I can remember my grandmother shouting, "Leave him alone, leave him alone." It's safe to say for the few weeks after that, my neck was aching like fuck from looking down so much. I fucking loved that game. I loved the team building aspect, really thinking about the 4 moves per Pokemon to best suit your team, learning the cries and typing of each Pokemon like the back of your hand, finding out the glitches the kids were talking about in school, being able to see your favorite Pokemon on TV, but probably the best thing about the game was the social aspect. Liking Pokemon was something everyone had in common. Adults, kids, everyone. We would borrow each other's link cables to battle and trade Pokemon, bring Pokemon cards and toys over each other's houses and into school. I even have a videotape somewhere of my 7-year-old self taking a camera around my house, showing off my Pokemon themed room and my Game Boy collection. Something you could only dream of reliving today. There were a few things that did put me off about the game though. Things like talking to a rocket grunt twice to get a key to drop, or purposely falling off the fucking map to actually progress certain parts of the game. TMs were unfortunately single-use items in the first few gens, and the insanely limited inventory and PC space for general items was absolutely horrific. Fortunately, all of these issues have been pretty much removed from later titles of the series, along with some incredible quality of life improvements. But regardless, Pokemon Red and Blue will forever be worth a purchase and will always have a spot on my must-play recommendation list. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more games I'm supposed to be reviewing each week, and thank you all for a massive 100,000 total views on the channel. I knew before I even considered making this review it would be a longer one, but thought I had to mark the occasion with a classic. If you've managed to make it this far through the video without skipping, fair play, I am impressed. Make sure you let me know what you thought of it. But as always, all the best guys, take care.